What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Football Corner Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremiah Queen. And of course, before we get started with today's episode, I would like for all my viewers out there on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, click that like button, click that notification bell so you can stay up to date when new videos drop on the channel. And of course, if you haven't even been subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do so. Also, if you're listening on a podcast app like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or even Spotify, go subscribe to the podcast. Now let's get started with the MVP. We only got one game left in the season, and if you're looking for any more validation, or if you're a voter and you're looking at who's going to be an MVP, they kind of already have in their mind who they want to pick by this time of the season. The last week really doesn't matter so much, especially with teams that already clinched the playoffs, and some people are already setting their seedings, so a lot of star players are going to be sitting on the bench in their last game of the season. But here's my four candidates. You have the top two candidates, in my opinion, is Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson. All you Lamar Jackson haters out there, there's been a lot surfacing as of late in the last 2 weeks. A lot of analysts are getting paid top dollar to talk football and just talk out of the end of their mouth. Let's address Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has thrown for 24 touchdowns. He's top 5 in QBR. He's top 5 in passer rating. He's top 10 in passing touchdowns. And then if you want to look at the people who are competing with him in the MVP race, like Dak Prescott or Brock Purdy, he is counted for 29 total touchdowns. That's, and he leads all QBs in rushing yards in general. This is why Lamar Jackson is a top-tier MVP candidate, and he is favored to win it again. And if he wins the MVP, he'll be the first player ever to win 2 MVPs before they turn 26. Not Mahomes, not Brady, not Montana, not Young, not Favre, not even Aaron Rodgers have ever accomplished that feat. But we don't even know he's going to win it. But if he does, that'll be interesting. The number 2 candidate, in my opinion, will be Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott has thrown for 32 passing touchdowns and accounted for 2 rushing touchdowns, which means he has a total of 34 touchdowns on the season. He's top 5 in passing yards, top 5 in completion percentage. He's top 5 in passer rating. Dak Prescott has been balling out this season, and I think he should get his flowers if he actually wins MVP, because the last time I talked about MVP race, Dak Prescott was in the lead of the MVP. People are going to say, well, he lost a lot of bad games to opponents that are inferior, and then he got blown out by the Niners. It happens. Every MVP has had a bad loss. That happens in football. And not all of the losses are on Dak Prescott. The loss against the Dolphins wasn't his fault. His defense couldn't get a stop. The last time he had the ball, they went to go score a touchdown to put them up a point in 2019, and then the defense will let the Dolphins get into field goal range, and they will always kick a game with a field goal to beat the Cowboys. Now, a number 3 candidate will be Brock Purdy. I don't care what all the haters want to say Brock Purdy, even though he was a 6th-round pick, the 7th-round pick, last pick in the draft. Doesn't matter. He's been balling out all season, and he just beat the franchise record for most passing yards in a single season in 16 games. It's not like he did it in 17 games. He did it in 16 games. And you know who played for that franchise? Colin Kaepernick, Steve Young, Joe Montana. Some of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen in NFL history. And Montana and Young, both in the Hall of Fame, both those single-season passing yard records have been beat. This is why Brock Purdy's in the discussion. And then you look at Brock Purdy's numbers. He has 31 passing touchdowns, and he has 2 rushing touchdowns, which gives him having 33 total touchdowns on the season at the quarterback position. And then my sneaky candidate. No one wants to talk about how well this quarterback has played, but I want to say I told you so about Jordan Love being that guy. Jordan Love has 30 passing touchdowns, which is 3rd in the league right now. This is on his first full year as a starter. If you look at compared to his 16 games as a full year starter versus Aaron Rodgers' 16 games, they're almost identical, except for one guy got more passing yards, one guy got more passing touchdowns, and that's Jordan Love. Have the Packers nailed again another Hall of Fame quarterback? Let's not go too far about that, but Jordan Love is playing lights out football, and I think he deserves his flowers. You might not think he's an MVP candidate, but what has he not done that didn't deserve him recognition for being MVP? He has 34 total touchdowns. That's Tyler Dak Prescott, who's an MVP candidate. His team might be 8-8, but he has a chance of taking them to the playoffs by beating the Chicago Bears in Week 18. Now, if he beats the Bears and go to the playoffs, you're talking about a team that not really many people believed in, and he's taking the youngest roster, the same roster that Aaron Rodgers could not take to the playoffs. He has the potential of taking them to the playoffs. The same roster that Aaron Rodgers complained about, the youth and the inconsistency at the receiving position, Jordan Love, because he's a young guy himself, came with this wide receiver group with a rookie and Reed, a second-year player in Romeo Dobbs, a second-year player in Christian Watson, and I mean, on Sunday Night Football, it was an undrafted guy. I mean, a rookie that was on the practice squad that was making plays that had over 100 yards. This is what Jordan Love does with his team. He has elevated the players around him, even though the players around him are young. I think the average age on this roster is like 24 or 25, which is by far the youngest roster in the league. And Matt LaFleur, I said this in the beginning of this, before the season started. I said, Matt LaFleur, the reason why I believe the Packers could go to the playoffs was because their defense was playing good football, and Matt LaFleur gets to run the true offense he wants to run and that's the reason why he drafted Jordan Love. Jordan Love, so far this season, 30 passing touchdowns, third in the league. Jordan Love really needs to get some recognition for the MVP. Let's talk about what happened on that Sunday Night Football game against the Cowboys and the Lions. And this is what I've been saying all season. At some point, you are got to assume the refs will actually give away the game because they're going to have two bad calls in the football game. It's going to happen. But plays like this is reason why that players have a hard time trusting referees or anything. I understand referees are human, and it's bound to happen. But it's one of the biggest blown calls to my memory since the 2018 pass interference call in the NFC Championship game, the Saints and Rams. That was probably the second worst call I've seen. The reason why it was such a bad call is because the head referee, Brad Allen, he said that number 68, Decker, didn't report eligible. He said it was 70. Even if he said it on a speaker, doesn't matter because when he goes over there, Decker said he's reported eligible. And you know what makes it even worse is that a player gets fined for calling out referees, but referees don't get fined for making bad calls. The league said, well, this refereeing crew won't be able to participate in the playoffs. Okay. How does that fix the outcome of what the Lions had to deal with? The Lions in that game went for two because they wanted to go for the win. And they got the 2-point conversion, and then they threw a flag. The referee said that it was illegal touching because number 68, offensive lineman, didn't report as eligible, which he did. It shows on video that he's going to the referee to report himself as eligible. The referee whiffs, blown call, and then if you're Dan Campbell, one thing I didn't like about in that situation, once the flag happened, kick the extra point and go to overtime. Dan Campbell was so emotionally invested on winning that ball game right then and there. You probably cost your team the number 2 seed or even possibly get a number 1 seed. Now with the number 1 seed being locked up by the Niners and in the AFC the number 1 seed being locked up by the Baltimore Ravens, the Lions now going to sit in the 3 seed because guess what? The Cowboys are number 2 seed because they beat y'all. Granted, it was a bad call, but the Cowboys still did that. And the Cowboys have the opportunity, as we transition to talk about the Dallas Cowboys, because everybody loves talking about the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys have the opportunity to run the table to go all the way to the NFC Championship game because they're on the number 2 seed. If they beat Washington, they win the division. They clinch the number 2 seed. Everybody had they at least get 2 home games in AT&T Stadium, in which this past season they went undefeated at home. But one thing we do know is that the division opponent games are the hardest games to win. This is why a lot of games this weekend on Week 18 have to deal with the atmosphere of talking about home field advantage for the Jaguars, the Bills, the Cowboys. Even the Eagles are still trying to get the number 2 seed or 3 seed, if possible, by winning the division and beating the Giants and hoping the Cowboys lose against Washington. But the Cowboys are in a really good position. All you got to do is finish the job. And if they finish the job, they have the biggest opportunity to actually get to the NFC Championship game, a game they have not played in since 1995. So you have that, and then you have, to the AFC side of things, you want to look at the Dolphins, who lost another big game in the AFC. They only beat one opponent above 500, and that'll be the Dallas Cowboys. And in a game where it was a good fought match by the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins have to figure it out now. I understand injuries happening. Bradley Chubb is out for the season. Jamal Agnew's out for the season for the Jaguars. A lot of players are missing and are being inactive or getting injured to end their seasons. And this is the worst thing to happen for them. You have Jalen Phillips is already out for the season. Now you get your second best pass rusher in Bradley Chubb, who had 11 sacks on the season, is out for the season. This is the worst thing that can happen for the Miami Dolphins, going to have to play Buffalo in Week 18 in order to win the division. Now, if I'm Mike McDaniels and I'm talking to my team, I say, hey, they got to come to our house. They got to come to us to dethrone us for where we are now. Right now, we're in a division lead, and they have the opportunity. If everything goes right for the Dolphins, they have the opportunity to actually knock the Bills out of playoffs in general if they beat them. But Dolphins gets to win the division. If Steelers win and little other teams win that goes their ways, the Bills could be out of the playoffs in 2023. Before we end today's episode, I want to give a shout out to Mike Tomlin for 17 consecutive seasons on having a winning season. This is a feat that is super hard. Like, to go above 500 and every season you've been the head coach of the Steelers shows the consistency and how great of a coach he is, and how great this organization is for drafting and recruiting players in the later rounds in order to develop them to being players that can help this team win. This team is on their third quarterback in Mason Rudolph, and he still was able to go above 500 with 9 wins, and they're hoping to beat the Baltimore Ravens, who most likely sit a lot of their starters in Week 18, so Mike Tomlin could go 10-7 and possibly get in that 7th seed in the playoff picture. Thank you for watching and listening to the Football Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the content I post on this channel, you will also like the content I post on my social media pages on Instagram and TikTok at the Football Corner podcast. Thanks for watching and listening. See you next time.